Hello and welcome to the Terra and Space Academy. This is rocket science, and today I want to address several important issues in the space industry.
Flight directors, go for launch.
In our first segment, we will see if Ariane 6 is any better than the proven but now retired Ariane 5. And while we are on the subject of proven, we will look at the recent explosion of a SpaceX Falcon 9 second stage vacuum Merlin engine, the first problem for the Falcon system after over 300 perfect flights. Then we will look at a possible solution to save the International Space Station, both as a historical treasure and as the start of a new space outpost. There will be a very brief Starliner update, since everyone's covering that now, and I'll introduce you to a couple smaller but very innovative space companies. First, a quick review of the Ariane 5. The Ariane 5 was developed by Europe's Arianespace and flew 117 times with 112 successful flights, starting in June of 1996. It only had 2 complete failures, which included its very first launch in 96 and then another on mission 14 in 02, and 3 partial failures, including its second launch in 97, followed by flights 10 and 97 in 2001 and 2018 respectively, ending on a high note in July of 2023 with 20 successful flights in a row. The Ariane 5 was very efficient at getting payloads to distant orbits, like geosynchronous transfer orbits, heliocentric orbits like the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, and to Lagrange point orbits like L2, where it put the James Webb Space Telescope in 2021. It had this capability because of its efficiency, and that goes to its basic design. Pairing a high-efficiency hydrogen-fueled central core with a lower efficiency but high-thrust booster system is a very good way to get a lot of mass to low Earth orbit, or a lower mass to a far more distant orbit. That's because nothing beats hydrogen at efficiency in space. The American Space Shuttle and SLS have solid rocket boosters to help get the hydrogen core to altitude. So did the Ariane 5. These have a lot of thrust, but a specific impulse of only about 269 seconds. The Soviet Energia rocket system, as well as the Chinese Long March 5, used RP-1 and liquid oxygen boosters with a much higher efficiency of 309 to 338 seconds. That made these systems much more capable. Like all of these, the Ariane 5 was considered a heavy lift vehicle. It had multiple second stage options, including 2 hypergolic choices and 1 that was hydrogen fueled. With a maximum launch mass of 777 metric tons, it was able to get up to 20 metric tons to low Earth orbit, using the ES third stage variant, and up to almost 11 tons to geosynchronous transfer orbit, using the ECA cryogenic upper stage. But its capability was still less than any of these other rocket systems. Comparing 20 metric tons to LEO by Ariane 5, with the Long March 5's 25 metric tons, the SLS at 95 metric tons, and the Energia's 100 metric tons. When we look at the Space Shuttle system, we must realize that it was putting a 27.5 metric ton payload in orbit with a space plane that had a dry mass of around 78 metric tons, altogether putting about 120 metric tons into orbit total with propellant, crew, and supplies. It beat any of these other systems by a wide margin, and came close to matching the total lift capacity of the Saturn V itself. If a Starship makes it to low Earth orbit with a dry mass of 120 metric tons and any more than 20 metric tons of payload and propellant, it will have finally beaten the Saturn V's 140 metric ton to low Earth orbit standard. Now the Ariane 5, costing $200 million per launch, has been retired, and the Ariane 6 has launched. The 6 is able to get about 21.65 metric tons to orbit in the A64 configuration and will cost only about $115 million per launch, and only $75 million in the A62 10.35 metric ton to LEO version. The Ariane 6 launched with 2 boosters on the 9th of July 2024, carrying a 1.6 metric ton mass simulator, which was a good thing, because the rocket's auxiliary propulsion system that pressurizes the second stage hydrogen and oxygen tanks failed, causing a loss of mission. No pressurization equals no propellant. The Ariane 6 has 2 to 4 solid rocket boosters using HTPB or hydroxyl-terminated polybutadiene, ammonium perchlorate, and aluminum. The first stage uses liquid hydrogen and oxygen with 1 Vulcain engine that has a thrust of 1,370 kilonewtons or 1.37 meganewtons. And the second stage is also hydrolox, with a single Vinci rocket engine at 180 kilonewtons. This will be a competitive, but not revolutionary rocket system. Hopefully the Europeans will live up to their potential soon. Don't tell me the greatest shipbuilders on Earth cannot make an 18-meter diameter, 200-meter tall, fully reusable rocket worthy of their capabilities to compete with Starship. Innovation dies without enough competition, as Boeing has proved. Next, we look at the Falcon 9 second stage engine that just exploded. I always suspect the turbopump, but not this time. It is obvious here that there was a propellant leak under this thermal insulation blanket. The Falcon 9 was carrying Starlink satellites into a highly elliptical orbit. The first burn went fine until the leak developed. When they fired up after a 45-minute pause to circularize the orbit, there was enough propellant collected to cause an explosion. The satellites, dipping as low as 138 kilometers at perigee after the failure, and despite loading new software and trying hard, will be low enough for atmospheric drag to remove about 5 kilometers from each orbit. The satellites don't have enough power to correct this and will burn up in the atmosphere. This ends SpaceX's streak of about 325 successful launches, but is unlikely to be anything serious unless there was a recent design change that led to this. Nothing will go perfectly always, which is a shame because 13 of the 20 satellites have the new direct-to-cell phone satellite capability that will revolutionize the telecommunications industry, bringing secure access to almost everyone on Earth that can afford service. The loss of this engine has grounded Falcon 9 until an investigation takes place, and is not good news for the American space industry. Without SpaceX, China launches about 4 times more rockets than America. And I think we as a nation need to be more innovative. We have the power right now to send high-mass objects to the moon, using the Falcon Heavy, or lower-mass ones with the Falcon 9. Innovative American companies like Intuitive Machines aren't just trying to land things on the moon. They've already done it.
Retro, go. Fido, go. Guide, go. Control.
This city of Houston,
Go. Ginsey.
this state of Texas,
Go.
this country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested and wished to look behind them.
At Intuitive Machines, we are mechanics.
This generation does not intend to founder in the backwash of the coming age of space. We mean to be a part of it. We mean to lead it.
Committed to President Kennedy's long-dormant challenge.
We set sail on this new sea because there is new knowledge to be gained and new rights to be won. And they must be won and used for the progress of all people.
From how we build, test, and deliver our designs, we are redefining traditional aerospace.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
With 3 missions to the moon over the next 2 years, we have pushed innovation at every step, creating in-house technology to solve intractable problems. From software to avionics, advanced manufacturing, guidance navigation and control, precision landing system, complete propulsion system, and more.
Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
Once assembled, this lander is directed from a state-of-the-art control room by a world-class team through an operational, worldwide lunar distance network. We are mechanics, pouring our heart, mind, and soul into creating the means to reach for something we once held long ago. Infinite possibilities come to those who believe. Our time is now.
All Nova controllers, go, no go for launch.
Flight manager, go.
Spark, go. Payloads, go.
Ground network, go.
Com, go.
Traj, go.
Fido, go.
Prop, go.
AD is go.
Nova control is go for launch.
And LVSEP is complete.
Copy.
Transmit enabled.
Attitude control enabled.
Tracking in progress.
Solar charge impact.
AD is go.
Transition to mode 202, prep for CM. Maneuvering to burn attitude.
Prop, settling.
Ignition.
Copy.
Main engine shutdown.
Good burn.
Transition to mode 204, HGA attitude pointing.
Approaching loss of signal and lunar orbit insertion. Acquisition of signal and lunar orbit insertion complete.
HDA scanning in progress. Safe sites found.
Prepare for landing.
All stations, this is Mission Director on IM-1. We're evaluating how we can refine that signal and dial in the pointing for our dishes. What we can confirm, without a doubt, is our equipment is on the surface of the moon, and we are transmitting. So, congratulations, IM team. We'll see how much more we can get from that.
An excellent call from our mission director,
MD
Dr.
Prime
Tim
on
Crane.
IM-1.
And over
Go
to
for
our
Prime.
CEO, Steve Altus.
Yeah, if I could just pass on a few words to the entire team in Intuitive Machines at Superbab and here in the Mission Control. What an outstanding effort. I know this was a nail biter, but we are on the surface and we are transmitting. And welcome to the moon.
It's important to remember that everyone seems interested in the moon right now, especially the far side and the South Pole's Icon Basin. This is because we haven't really explored the moon's surface since the early 1970s, and the Icon Basin holds a secret. Not just the increased carbon that was an unexpected benefit of China's sample return mission, but buried under the surface may be a high-mass metallic asteroid. This is how all gold currently mined on Earth came to be there. Asteroid impact. Any gold here when the Earth formed would have sunk to the core. While the Chinese have had great success exploring the moon remotely, Russia crashed their Lunar 25 probe that had a radioactive heater, so it could have lasted a year, as did Israel with its Beresheet lander. India landed on the moon with a rover, but after the 14 Earth days of sunlight, it did not survive the equally long lunar night. Japan's lander tipped over, but was still able to operate, and this happened to intuitive machines also. I think it's clear they need to lower their center of gravity, more like alpaca than HLS. The next generation of intuitive machine lunar landers should get a lot more mass to the surface. Combining this with Falcon Heavy would get us rovers, telescopes, and habitats to the moon very quickly, as well as emergency ascent ships, which I think need to be there before we try to land any human beings at all. Next, let's give a quick look back to the ISS. Several of you made suggestions about what we could do with it, and here's something I want you to think about. Send up some updated habitat sections, like those produced by Sierra Nevada or Axios, and use a magnetoplasma dynamic engine built by our friends from Germany's Neutron Star Systems, makers of the best magnetoshield this side of Titan, to slowly boost it to L1. This would be a very low G acceleration, so we don't have to worry about tearing it apart. At L1, it can serve as the start of a new, much larger structure that we'll call Aldrin Station, since the first American outpost on the moon will almost certainly be called Armstrong. Over time, we can use the Falcon Heavy and eventually Starship and maybe New Glenn to boost more habitats until we have an extremely capable orbital outpost that can house the many transiting astronauts on their way to and from the moon. This would be much more efficient than trying to land something on the moon that can make it all the way back to Earth. How much propellant would we need? With a final mass of 450 metric tons, provided the Russians don't insist on burning up their half in the atmosphere, and assuming a specific impulse of 1500 seconds, it takes about 4 kilometers per second delta V to get to the moon, and a little less than 3.5 to get to L1. Using our magnetoplasma dynamic thrusters, we could do this with about 121 metric tons of propellant. So let's hope Starship steps up its game soon. If we had the nuclear engine being designed by Lockheed Martin or the one by Rolls-Royce, we would actually need more propellant, since those are limited to about 900 seconds of specific impulse. That would take up to 219 metric tons. But we could use a nuclear reactor and go electrothermal instead. Nuclear electric is the most efficient design we have right now, until we have fusion. Maybe with the Vasmer VX200SS engine described in this lesson and test-fired in 2021. With a specific impulse of up to 5,000 seconds, we would only need 83 metric tons. Now, people will say that you have to cool that reactor. My answer is the cryogenic propellant can be used as the coolant while it's operating. Just a thought. Starship could lift 100 metric tons soon, hopefully, and the SLS and New Glenn could come close. The next issue is, of course, Starliner. Starliner is probably a well-designed spacecraft, but it was not designed to sit for a decade or more before use. The cascade of continuing problems makes me feel that sending it back with crew is an unwarranted risk. Even if everything goes fine, that doesn't make it the right choice. It could just as easily mean they got lucky. If NASA really wants Starliner, let them try to break even carrying cargo first, until they get the faults worked out, just like SpaceX did. And Sierra Nevada is about to start doing, if they ever get to launch on a Vulcan rocket. I say forget Vulcan, and launch on a Falcon 9 instead, after they analyze that second stage failure, of course, and are back in operation, which I don't think will take more than a month. Now I'm going to introduce you to a company you may not be aware of, that just tested their rocket engine on a hypersonic demonstrator dropped by the awesome Strato launcher. Granted, the X-15 did this from a B-52 with a pilot over a half-century ago, but it's good to see research firing back up at Astra Pro Terra.
Propulsion touches more parts of your life than you're even aware of. Whether it's flying in the skies, putting satellites up into space with the cell phones that are in your pocket, to all aspects of life, propulsion is integral. If you look at where the nation and we as humans are going in the next 20 or 30 years, it's very clear that propulsion is going to need to be an incredibly important part of that. Ursa kind of entered the scene with that premise when we're trying to be at the leading edge of it.
I'm Joe Lorienti, and I'm the founder and CEO of Ursa Major.
My name is Nick Doucette, and I'm Ursa Major's Chief Operations Officer.
I'm Lauren Powers. I am the Portfolio Director for our launch propulsion systems.
My name is Brad Appel, Chief Technology Officer here at Ursa Major.
I'm William Summers. I'm the Chief Engineer over the Solid Rocket Motor Program here at Ursa Major.
My name is Bill Murray, and I'm the Chief Product Officer here at Ursa Major, and I run the Solid Rocket Motor Division.
3, 2, 1... Ignition. What's your number? Take out for 1,500 feet and 8 stop. Looks good. Roger, wait right now.
The best starting point in my mind is really the space race with the USA and Russia. We achieved amazing things back then, technological feats that I think we, in some ways, still have yet to replicate today.
If you would look back to the 60s, most inventions that took place were happening because of NASA and affiliates.
The United States built up such a head start in all of these areas, and it's still riding those coattails today, but the trends are not promising.
If you look at the technology that we were building and flying in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and what we're flying now, they're not very different.
There's very little competition, hence very little drive for innovation, because innovation means risk, right? Innovation means cost.
Really, until SpaceX came along and started reusing rockets, we didn't see massive innovation in aerospace from the end of the Cold War. We are no longer innovating. We're no longer sparking creative new companies.
What that has done, it's been going on for a couple decades now, is we're behind. We're a fraction of the size of China. So they've already got an advantage as far as resources are concerned.
If you take SpaceX out of the picture, I think China is launching at 4 times the cadence of the US.
What we don't want to end up happening is a slow chess game of China and Russia developing better missile technology, and one day we wake up and we're 10 or 20 years behind.
I feel that there's a strong possibility that we will be sadly left in the dust if we don't make some pretty immediate changes.
What we're trying to do is offer the Department of Defense and other aerospace partners types of propulsion technology to counter these very fast hypersonic threats that China and Russia are putting forward.
There's hypersonic technology, with a variety of applications, both defensive and offensive, and then solid rocket motors for the aspect of missile defense and deterrence.
Everyone's here because Hadley, our 5,000-pound thrust engine, is going to fly for the first time, and we're watching it drop from one of our first customers, Stratolaunch.
First flight's a big deal for any aerospace company. There are a lot of companies out there that are young that have ideas and PowerPoints and drawings and hardware, but actually having it verified in operation is a big deal.
So once they get up to the proper altitude over the ocean, they'll drop the test vehicle. Basically, Hadley will light and take it up to high speed.
As a company, since day one, flight's always been an objective of ours. Obviously, for us, we don't fly vehicles, so we count on customers to do that for us.
Hopefully everything goes well. We get a drop, we see a light.
There's a skill base and an industrial base and a sort of competency base that we have to build up again. And there's challenges in that, and there's failing, and there's, God, this is hard. That's manufacturing. You know, hands have to make it.
When you're in the development life cycle, when you are fielding a new technology, failure is one of the best things that can happen. You want to push hardware to its limits. You want to quickly learn and iterate and change the way that you're thinking about hardware.
Our key is iterating fast, learning what we can on the test stand in a relevant environment so that we can field new platforms more quickly than ever.
We pride ourselves on the speed at which we can deploy products, complicated products, systems that are moving at 65,000 RPM and producing, thousands of pounds of thrust. And we do it in, I'd say, industry-leading times.
One of the things that makes Ursa so unique is the fact that we design and manufacture our engines in the same place. We're also testing and developing those.
You could have a part fail, engineer go back to the computer, redesign, reprint, machine, qualify, and get it back on a platform and get it back testing within weeks.
And it's such a critical technology that you need to focus on it. And in order to focus on it, you need experts to focus on it. Ursa's those experts.
Ursa Major, at this point in time, has assembled a world-class team and the technology and experience surrounding all of that to move quicker than any propulsion firm out there.
Colorado offered us the opportunity to test rocket engines every day and do so a 30-minute drive from an incredible place to live.
I worked multiple programs for different nuclear ICBMs most of my career. I wanted to be able to be a part of a company that was going to improve the entire landscape. We're actually already seeing it.
We need to see companies pushing one another and focusing on technology versus seeking to own a single mission and really excel at it.
So that's one thing that I think is really valuable, the non-tangible asset that we're providing, which is that spirit of competitiveness, which increases competency everywhere.
We need to, as an industry, couple the rapid development and iteration and blowing things up with the ability to take the technologies that mature out of that and quickly get them in the hands of operators as safe end uses.
Really, our engines are here to enable the industry to grow the technology and also potentially be deployed to actual applications for hypersonic vehicles. So it's the biggest milestone in the company's history.
5, 4, 3. Release. Good release. Stable. Ignition.
America has always been this beacon of building and making. And I think if you combine the hustle and grittiness of that American frontier with tremendously accurate engineering judgment, I think you found yourself what the early space program probably found itself doing back in the 50s and 60s, making great decisions, moving really quickly, and doing it without the glam and glitz of all the Silicon Valley that kind of comes with that type of backing.
What we're doing here at Ursa is going to have a huge impact on the capability of America to be able to maintain our status as a well-defended and well-protected country. And I believe that we have the capability to provide the impetus for a big shift in the industry.
Ursa Major is beginning to have a global impact, and that should only accelerate over the next couple of years.